one of the things that I call myself, I have an alter ego, and her name is Beulah. And Beulah, Beulah is a pig. So this came about by saying, whenever I'm researching, I'm happy as a pig in you know what. So Beulah, I want you to engage your inner Beulah with me. And I want to describe to you just a little bit about my grant research that I did this summer, because it gave me incredible hope. And I think it's one of the most exciting things that I've seen, and it's sparked my fire again. And that is, we looked at successfully entrepreneurial churches, churches who have taken their property and done something amazing with it that is outside of the box, entrepreneurial, right? And we looked at and tried to find what are the attributes of churches who were successful. We compared that with churches who aren't successful in order to get to these things. But real quickly, and I'm not going to go through this in detail because this is not a webinar on that research, although I will have one at some point. But some of the attributes were leader orientations that are learning and listening and focused on the abundance and not the scarcity. Comfort with risk and uncertainty. Oh my goodness. And so we're going to come back to this, but this is a big one, is that it's not about a certain skill set or set of a certain kind of charismatic leader. That didn't matter. It was that we have a learning mindset, a listening mindset, and a mindset of abundance. Also purpose in context. In other words, you are not just a church, any church, the church. You are this church in this neighborhood. And when you dig down into those details and figure out your purpose in your context, these churches then were able to understand their mission in that place. And so getting clear about their personal call, which is internal work that we can be doing, and external work, which is getting really familiar and being very clear about how you intersect with your neighborhood. Now, I have to say that this was the impetus for my Advent Christmas series, this research. And that's why I call it the Inn, Housing the Holy, because I was so inspired by churches really connecting with who they are in the neighborhood. Who are you as the inn? Can you make room in the inn, in your place? Can you get passionate about the needs of the community and see yourself as a house for the holy in the midst of this? The three churches, I'll just tell you briefly, one of them took their big old church that a very small congregation was rattling around, and they began to give affordable office space for nonprofits in their neighborhood. They began to make affordable space for educational groups in their neighborhood. They created kind of the medieval parish model, back to that model, saying, how can we be a hub for the holy? And those of you who did my Lent series called Holy Vessels know that I was really pushing folks to understand how they could become a hub of renewed health. And many of you did vaccination clinics and testing clinics and mental health hubs and resourcing centers. And that's exactly what this series is about. And I'm so very excited that we can focus on the innkeeper, not as the sort of gets a bad rap, right? The innkeeper does. And actually the innkeeper is not biblical, not in there, but we in our imaginations have always talked about the innkeeper. But the innkeeper was an entrepreneur that said, actually, we don't have room, but let me think, where could we get you room, right? So thinking outside of the box. And so I'm very excited about this series. And one of the things that I'm going to do as part of it in preparation for it is invite leaders of churches to read a book that I discovered in my research called We Aren't Broke. It's a brand new book, and it's about looking at the assets, the abundance of your church property and your neighborhood, and saying, how can we leverage this to not just survive or just try to get pledges in order to keep the doors open, but how can we create a business model and a financial model that can sustain not only us, but can also help the neighborhood? So I'm very excited about this. At the end of the webinar, I'll give you a discount code for 20% off of this series. If you're not a Worship Design Studio subscriber, of course, those of you who are, it's always free to you. And we're going to do a pre-sale until Labor Day. So just so you know, looking holistically, this is all about looking holistically. And then our worship helps us. Some of the other things that I researched that was came out of our research is that grief, change management, grief, relationships, conflict. This was huge in successful entrepreneurial churches. And so if that's something that you feel like you need help with, because we need to deal with our grief and our change, and we need to be good at doing that. And so getting better skills in that was one of the things that we learned. And then also understanding that we're part of an ecosystem, that you are not alone, and that we don't have to learn everything ourselves, pastors, if this is blowing your mind. We just have to learn how to collaborate. That's all. Learn relationships and dialogue and that kind of thing. I am doing a new certificate in spiritual entrepreneurship, both for people who want to do freelance things within and outside of the church, but also people who want to be entrepreneurial within their churches. And you can find out more about that at the link that Jenna is going to put in the chat. And we will make sure we have all these links in the notes for the recording.